kill the brain and you kill the ghoul.
Welcome back, boils and ghouls, and thank you for joining us once again as we chat about all things horror. March being Women's Month, today we'd like to focus on the Frightful Femme Fatales as we celebrate the women of horror. From our final girls to our scandalous scream and slasher queens. With me today are C from Wither.
Hey there.
And Ken of the Dead.
Hey guys.
There are so many amazingly iconic women of horror, so listeners, please forgive us if we miss your favorite, but feel free to drop us a comment and we promise to mention your choice on the next round. With that, let's dive in. So Ken, to get things started, what's the difference between a final girl, a scream queen, and a slasher queen?
Thanks, G. Okay, so final girls are typically the last female survivor in a horror film. The one who was able to defeat the odds, overcome their fate, and make it to the end. Scream queens are iconic women in the horror genre who have played multiple roles both as an antagonist and a protagonist, or sometimes just the same consistent character over a long period of time, landing them that iconic status. A slasher queen is a woman best known as an iconic villain or killer, you know, like your favorite bad girl.
That's fear-tastic. Okay. See, let's start off with your favorite final girl.
Okay, so the list is very, very long. You know, it's kind of hard to exhaust the entire list of what we have here. But going off of, you know, one of my favorite not TV shows, excuse me, my favorite movie series growing up, and, you know, even to this day, if it's on, I'll throw it on almost every time, is Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley in The Alien.
Oh, yeah.
Like that film series. So, you know, like, she starts off and she's just one of the crew. You know, the movie obviously shows that, you know, she's kind of the lead character in there and everything, but the way the films kind of evolve, you know, and she ends up being basically the lone survivor and coming up with the ways on how she's gonna to kill the xenomorph and stuff. I mean, I think she's probably, if I had to go with final, she's probably at the top of the list.
Yeah,
there are a bunch, but you know, it's hard to, from trying to take into account what there is new and what there is old. You know, her characters across the board are almost always fantastic. Say that again?
Oh, no, I was just saying it was super iconic pick, right? Sigourney Weaver, Alien.
Oh, yeah. That's amazing. That's actually the one I was going to go with because I love Sigourney Weaver. But
and let's not forget Ghostbusters, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Ken?
There's no surprise I'm going to pull my favorite final girl from my favorite horror franchise. It's got to be Ashley Lawrence from Hellraiser.
Nice.
Right? Like, I've got to go. I've got to go with my home team. And I thought, like, and it's disappointing that I haven't seen her in more things because she was so good, especially in that first movie. That like that fear, and you could see like just coming to grips with the reality she's put into, from, you know, kind of seeing her stepmother as, you know, betraying her father, but then as like a serial killer, and then this otherworldly supernatural this force coming into her life and having to overcome it. I think she nailed that role, and I'm taken aback by her every time I watch that movie. And again, it doesn't hurt that it's my favorite franchise, but I think she runs through all those steps, right? Like that fear and escaping, and then overcoming her fear, going back to save her father, and to the point of actually figuring out how to defeat the Cenobites and her crazy uncle Frank, right? Yeah, she hits all the notes for me. And I had a huge crush on her as a kid. So.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. Definitely Ashley Lawrence. What about you, G?
So I'm going to go with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Of course,
yeah.
The original.
Yeah, one of the original final girls. Halloween, Terror Train. I mean, she's like a staple and still doing the horror movies. Prom
Night's another killer one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's been doing it for so long. She did other things, but she always seems to go back to horror. Yeah, no, that's you're never gonna go wrong. She's probably the most famous, woman in horror out there, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good one.
All right. So,
What are some other good ones? Well, we can't skip. We can't go through Final Girls without talking. I don't want to call them runner-ups because they're all classic, right? What about Heather Langenkamp, Nightmare on Elm Street?
oh yeah,
Right?
that's a good one.
That deserves, high status for sure. I'm not a huge Scream fan, but I think Neve Campbell is pretty high up on that list.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think when you kind of put them all into a bucket, right? The movies are all they're different, so you can't kind of put them on the same pedestal. But there's something about Scream that over time I think has aged very well.
Yeah, no, and especially that first one too. It's been a long time since I've done a marathon of them, but I think that first one kind of holds the brightest torch for icon status.
So there was one other that I wanted to drop in here. So it's a newer movie. I think it came out 4 or 5 years ago, 2019, called Ready or Not. Have you guys seen that?
That one is so fun. That is, that's just a
fantastic movie. And she's the main character is played by Samara Weaving, and probably one of my current, more modern, all-time favorite that you could consider a Final Girl, especially the way that movie ends. It's fantastic,
for sure. And it's funny because every year there's more and more, right? Like if you ask someone now, their list, they would drop names and we'd be like, oh yeah. But it's their Heather Langenkamp, it's their Ashley Lawrence, it's their Sigourney Weaver, right? And that's the cool thing I think about the horror genre is women are so prominent in it, right? Like we just take it for granted that not everything is that way, and there's so many of them, so many epic ones. What about you, Lena?
I mean, I'm a very indecisive person. So I kind of got my favorite Final Girl, I have to say, is Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, it's a classic. She's a classic. And just seeing her from one Halloween to another and just sticking with the franchise as much as she did. I really love her performance everywhere she's been in, even outside of horror. And I also have a modern, I don't know, she's not really a Final Girl, but Jenna Ortega. Oh, she's kind of a Final Girl, yeah.
Yeah.
She's putting out one movie after another, and she loves horror, and she's going to be a Scream Queen for life, she says.
Yeah.
So I really love her, especially because she represents my generation of horror fans.
Right.
So that's what I really love.
And it's funny because she's she's pretty much legendary now. And for me and Gigi, we're from another generation. She's still, I think, and G, you can argue me if I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think that people who were 80s horror fans kind of consider her or take her as seriously as we should. You know what I mean? But I think
she deserves so much more love.
Yeah, and I picture her 10 years from now and 20 years from now, and the way that she loves horror and basically wants to stay in that genre. I picture 20 years from now, Jenna Ortega, she's going to be massively legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt.
And then
a good one.
One of the Scream Queens I want to talk about, I mean, I already posted her in the server, is Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
Her portrayal in Misery.
Yeah.
God damn, she scared me. She's the next level fangirl, and also with characters in American Horror Story. I mean, she played villains, she played protagonists,
She's just such a fantastic actress, right? Like,
Yeah,
so well written.
she's
Yeah.
so well rounded. You can be scared of her. You can feel sympathy for her.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I just love that woman. She everywhere I see her, I'm instantly falling in love with the character she portrays again and again. So
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, my fault. One of the things I love about the horror genre is honestly a lot of the criticism it gets is they're like, oh, it's just murdering women or something. But the amount of women that portray like strong, dynamic characters that would pass like the Bechdel test or whatever it's called, and women directors, like honestly, it's really high.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's definitely a genre that that has that all around good mix, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue to say that the horror genre, like as a whole, is owned and driven by women.
I
Like
can get behind that.
when you look at all of the great classics, most of them, I would say, you know, I didn't do any math before we came here because I haven't done that in a long time, but I mean, I would say like 70 to 80% of all of the iconic movies from the past, and even the newer ones coming today, they are all very driven by
Female driven.
they're very female driven, which yeah.
No, that's true, especially in like the 70s. Like, that's something that I love going back and just watching old movies. Sometimes I'll go to Tubi and just throw on an old movie. You know how Tubi's really good about like the lineup of movies when a movie ends are all right in the ballpark.
Oh yeah.
So sometimes, like on a lazy Sunday afternoon, I'll throw on a horror movie on Tubi and just rinse out whatever they suggest. But you do see a lot of strong female presence right at like the dawn of what we would consider like that slasher era.
Yeah.
And even before, right? But
Well, definitely
like,
even before. I mean, you could go all the way back and say like, well, like
Bride
Mary
of
Shelley
Frankenstein.
writing Frankenstein.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
horror is definitely like in the female sphere, I feel like. Or like new stuff like The Last of Us, Bella Ramsey's portrayal of Ellie. Holy moly.
Right. Yeah.
What a great story.
For sure.
All right, so moving on from that, let's talk about some Scream Queens. See who's your favorite.
There's
It's a broad.
yeah, well, it's hard to delineate, you know, like is someone a final or a Scream or a slasher or both, and then if they're all three,
If they're super iconic, you could always land them right in Scream Queen, right? Even if they were mostly villain or mostly, you know, victim, escaping victim. If they've been around a while and they're super iconic, Scream Queen will nail it, right?
yeah. So if I had to go just strictly Scream, well, I mean, I can't even say that. Never mind. If I just had to go and pull somebody from a different a different category and put them into Scream Queen, I think I would probably start with, and hopefully I'm not stealing anybody's here, but Linnea Quigley.
Oh
yeah.
Good one.
From Return of the Living Dead,
Mhm.
Night of the Demons. I think she's definitely up there. I think even, you know, we just talked about Neve Campbell and Scream as a final girl, but also I think she has a part of her can fit into this category as well.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis too, right? Like she's often referred to as Scream Queen, for sure. Yeah, but Linnea Quigley, man, I love her. I love that, and talk about like both sides of the border, right? Like because you know, Return of the Living Dead, you know, just this badass chick who does get victimized, right, eaten by zombies, but then it turns around and she's like this ultimate zombie, you know, and like how iconic that scene where she like pops up as like zombie trash, right? Oh man, I love her. And,
yeah, I mean,
some funny just before we really jump off, Leanna, is we were talking about this post show. For anyone who doesn't know, I just found this out as we were prepping. And I like to think, anyways, that my horror knowledge is pretty good, but I like legit just learned this. Tourist Trap, which we've talked about a few times on the show, the 1979 slasher Tourist Trap. Leanna Quigley had an uncredited role playing one of the mannequins in that movie, which that just kind of like blew my mind because I know her as this famous woman of horror, and she was literally just like a girl underneath this mannequin skin who wasn't even credited in the movie, which I found super funny. But yeah, that's a big one. Good one, Steve.
Speaking of Tourist Trap, one of my all-time favorite scream queens, Barbara Crampton, has a Tourist Trap project right now
that she's producing. How good is she?
Oh my god, she's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. From Beyond. And then more recently, like Suitable Flesh, and then Preacher's Wife, which was really good too.
Right.
Which is also on Shudder. And then my other favorite scream queen, I love Elvira, of course, and then Lupita Nyong'o from Us and Little Monsters.
Right. Oh, so good. Yeah, she's phenomenal.
Jumping back to Barbara, we can't leave out Chopping Mall. Which,
oh my gosh, yes.
Which, speaking of Chopping Mall, we got Kelly Maroney, right? Chopping Mall, Night of the Comet. Her list is massive. Definitely iconic 80s, 90s scream queen, right?
Oh, yeah. And that hair.
I think.
That's like quintessential 80s hair.
Definitely the 80s hair. I gotta mention in the scream queen genre, Barbara Steele, right? I'm going back, back to the 60s, but the first Italian, not that she was Italian, but Italian star, like Italian horror movie star. And she's been on my mind a lot. I just rewatched Black Sunday. I haven't seen it in years. Which led me down this whole road of Barbara Steele horror movies. But super, super iconic, right at the forefront of, that pre-slasher genre. That black and white coming into color. Nightmare Castle, like what a freaking classic, right? And I love me some old movies. I love me some old black and white movies, but like Black Sunday, I remember that movie just being burned into my subconscious, and that look of Barbara Steele. And she's both antagonist and like she plays two different characters in that movie, and nails them both, like the innocent girl and then the villainous kind of demon witch. I love that movie. I love her in it. I think just she has that presence that can lean to either side so perfectly.
I haven't seen either one of those. So
Black Sunday is like ultra classic horror 101. It's like one of those movies. We talk about like Night of the Living Dead, like redefining the genre. And there's like a lot of movies that we could pull from that kind of do that. I would say that Black Sunday is one of those. It's probably one of the most iconic classic horror.
I mean, it's got a title, like the name, that I would probably click on it and watch it regardless of what anything said about it, just because it sounds like an appealing movie. So great. I've got something to do.
Right? So you gotta kind of know what you're getting into. But it is very, very Night of the Living Dead kind of feel to it.
Right. Well, there goes my tomorrow morning. So
there you go. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
All right.
You want to jump down to slashers, Sergi?
Let's jump down to slashers. Who's your favorite? See?
Okay. So, and you guys can correct me, right? So kind of like you're my left and right limits here. So I've always been a huge fan of the Carrie movie, like the original Carrie movie.
For sure. Sissy Space.
Sissy Spacek. That's right. So now this is one of those things where I enjoy the remake more.
Oh, really?
I do. I don't know why. I've been a big fan of Moretz. God, what is her name? I'm so sorry. I can't think of her name now. Yeah, from the remake, Chloe Moretz.
Right.
I think she's a phenomenal actress, and I think the movie, I think she did the original justice. It's definitely one of those remakes where it wasn't one that most people, at least from my opinion, most people could watch that movie and not feel like they were duped by the remake. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think she played a very compelling Carrie, and her portrayal of the character was phenomenal. I think the whole prom scene was fantastic, and because that movie is a slow build most of the time, right? It's like all of these things happen. Yeah, and it slowly ticks up until all of a sudden, it becomes overwhelming for the character, and then all of a sudden it becomes overwhelming for everybody.
Right.
I'm looking at IMDb actually right now, and it doesn't look like it was very well reviewed.
No, I was surprised actually when you said it, because like most people are like, it's blasphemous.
Yeah, so you know what? All those people, oh well, too bad. I loved it. And I thought it was fantastic, and we added it to our 30 days that we watched last year. And if it's on, I'll watch it all the time. I think, and especially the ending of that movie when she just goes bananas was fantastic. I don't know. I can't say enough about it, but maybe I like bad movies.
No, it's a good choice, man. And like, just on the topic of Carrie, I think what really, because they are kind of slow, right? And at some points a little bit cheesy, but I think the one that sold that original, just on topic for, slasher queens, Sissy Spacek's like portrayal of Carrie in that original, like being that innocent, like bullied girl, like very shut in, bullied by the kids at school, bullied by her mom. Her mom was probably the scariest thing about that movie, FYI. But but like that, like seeing her play that role, and she played it super well. And then when she snaps at the end, like, man, I don't know anyone that could have done that as good, right? Like, that was still to this day gives me shivers, like just that look on her face when it's like, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah, and let me be very clear to anybody. I feel the exact same way about the original. I think the original was fantastic. I just like this one better. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. No, I didn't hate it. I didn't understand why everyone was so hard on the remake. I guess
because it was a remake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At a certain point, we do get sick of remakes.
We know how those conversations go.
Oh, good lord, yeah, we do. But yeah, that's it for me. Ken, you didn't do your Slash Queen yet?
No. So again, no surprise. People are probably gonna get either sick of it or they're gonna just start trying to guess. So I'm gonna go. It's not my favorite character, not like probably one of the best. No one would argue that it's not the best. I'm not gonna go with my favorite book, who I think is the best out of my favorite franchise, and that's gonna be Claire Higgins from Hellraiser. The evil stepmother. Julia in Hellraiser, she's kind of, this uptight, posh stepmom, turned a little bit sleazy, right? When Frank shows up, but then like becomes a murderer, like a serial killer. And then even jumping into Hellraiser 2, she's almost like the big baddie. She takes that role of Frank, as the skinless, return. I think her performance is just phenomenal. She's sexy. She's scary. She's sympathetic at times, right? I think she nails it. But at the end of the day, she's villainous, man. She is sexy villainous, and I love it. I love her every time I see it.
I love that.
Yeah,
She does a great job.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because it's definitely not easy, I think, to be like that sadistic and kind of tap into that more like feral side of womanhood.
Right.
Because it's so easy to fall into like a nurturer, like survivor role, right? Like
Sure.
I think that's more intuitive. Maybe it's just me.
But you get a little bit of that too, though, right? And that's why I think that her performance and the contradictory performance in from Hellraiser to Hellbound for her, I thought was phenomenal, because you do see that nurturing side of her, right? After the initial shock of when Frank comes back wears off, it's that care. What can I do for you? And that answer to that question is, well, you can murder people and let me drink their blood so I can regain my flesh. And she's like, okay, right? Whatever. Burn the world down, right? No, I love her. But there are so many, right?
There are.
Kathy Bates, Misery, right?
Oh.
Come on. What a performance was that?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
Felissa Rose.
Jennifer Tilly. Oh, Felissa. Felissa won our community Woman of Hope. Yeah, yeah, she did. For anyone who doesn't know, we C and me and G, we run a couple of Discords, the Wither server and the Cold Dead Heart server. And the Cold Dead Heart server, on our socials, we have this little video of a Halloween message from Felissa Rose. She did for one of our members at a HorrorCon. Just such a sweetheart. And she's and Barbara Crampton is very much like this. They're very much involved in the horror community. You know what I mean? They're actresses and they have their roles that they play, but just as people, they're still in the fan community with us. You know what I mean? And it adds a whole new depth of appreciation. I love her, man. I've got some people before. Felissa Rose, my goddaughter watched Sleepaway Camp for the first time in October, and Felissa just happened to be at a local convention on Halloween weekend, so I took her down to meet her. And man, oh man, there's no exaggeration when people talk about just how real and personable she is in real life. She came right around the table when she heard that my goddaughter had just watched Sleepaway Camp, and she was obsessed with it, by the way. She went home and made all her friends watch it. She came right around the table and gave her a big hug and took a bunch of pictures with her. Just the coolest woman.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that.
Oh, yeah. It just adds a new level of appreciation, right? It's one thing to be professionally talented, but to both be talented and be just a cool human being, you know what I mean? Or an extra cool human being, that's a whole new level of appreciation.
That's special.
We're going to get in trouble if we don't mention Jennifer Tilly.
Yes.
Bride of Chucky. Yeah, right?
I love her.
Super icon. Yeah. And huge icon. And for us 80s kids, probably a lot of our very first slasher queen, Betsy Palmer from Friday the 13th, Jason's mom.
Nice.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Big time fun there.
And I gotta mention Angela Bassett from American Horror Story.
Yeah.
Wow. Her performances are incredible.
Yeah, and she's really, I mean, I can't say that I can't say that I knew her very well before that that show came out.
Mm-hmm.
But since that show came out, like, she's all over the place, and it is fantastic.
Ooh, I gotta drop in my fellow Canadian, Catherine Isabel, Ginger Snaps, American Mary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My hometown girl.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
So
and
after
killer indie movies.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, G.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, do we want to flip over to some horror movie directors?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, see,
hugely important.
Do you have a favorite woman horror director?
So I do.
Okay.
But I didn't know that until recently.
Oh.
So American Psycho is
Mary
probably
Harron.
one. Yeah, Mary Harron was probably one of the original movies that kind of got me into the slasher type type films, and I didn't realize that it was a female director. Also, props to the Canadians because she's a Canadian filmmaker. But yeah, I think that was probably in my youth. If we pulled out the zombie genre, American Psycho was probably one of my favorites, and it actually tied into because I had first originally watched with my grandpa. I'd watched Alfred Hitchcock a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
and he had in the 60s, I believe it was, he had the original, or not the original, but he also had Psycho, and it's just kind of, so you had Psycho and then you had the American Psycho, so they're not quite the same, but
reminiscent.
Yeah, and I got into the TV show as well, but I would say going through, like, really thinking about it, I would have to sit with American Psycho, Mary Harron, for sure.
Good one.
Yeah, Ken, what about you?
I'm gonna drop another couple of Canadians, right? Because got to represent Jen and Sylvia Soska.
You guys
right?
are taking all of mine.
Mary, Rabid, right?
Yes.
And they're also heavily involved in the indie comic industry too. They do work for Marvel and NGC and stuff, but I just love that they're like over like two big genres that I love. They're big into horror, they're big into comics. Their personalities are super cute, super cool. Got to give props to Canadian sisters.
Nice. Well,
before we steal any more, G.
I know. It's like, let me get in there. I'm going to go with Jennifer Kent, The Babadook.
Oh, it's such a good movie.
Good one.
Right?
What a good movie, too, right? Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Man. Yeah. Nailed it.
I thought just the whole premise, and it's long-standing, like, it entered the genre, and it hasn't left. Like, I feel like people still actively reference it.
And people actively like find this movie. Like, it's new to a lot of people too, right? Like, I feel like every week, I said like a whole bunch of times in a row there, but it's almost like every week I hear someone mention the fact that, I just watched this movie for the first time and it blew me away. Like, yes.
Yeah.
That movie is so good.
Get with the program. Jeez.
Right?
It's such a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind. I had someone on the Discord the other day ask me, I did a random, Barbara Crampton appreciation post. Someone's like, who's that? I'm like, oh no.
Here goes 2 hours of my life.
3 movies. Yeah. Do not talk to me again until you've watched these movies.
Yes.
They'll change your life.
Oh, that's funny.
And make sure to watch Suitable Flesh.
Oh yeah, Suitable Flesh for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do some genre honorable mentions. See, I know you're a big Dead series fan, and a lot of classic women in horror in the Dead series.
Yeah. So to jump around a little bit, if I went with Scream, I would definitely go with Judith O'Dea and Barbara in the original Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, for sure.
Granted, spoiler alert, she doesn't make it very long. If you haven't seen it by now, then I'm not worried about it. But I don't know what it is, but one of my favorite scenes in that movie, I would put in the slasher queen, and it for no other reason because it's not a slasher queen, but the little girl in the basement who was bit. Her character name is Karen Cooper. She was played by Kyra Schoen is the girl's name. And she impales her mom to death with the spade. And that was one of the, I'm gonna throw it in there. And then for final,
the first kid zombie, by the way, right? As zombies as we know it. That's first kid zombie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
there's the props.
It did go away from my whole zombies don't use tools, but
Romero.
For Romero. But it's still classic. And then if I went with final, I would have to go with the Dawn of the Dead remake.
Oh yeah.
So you have Anna Clark played by Sarah Polley. I thought she did a fantastic job, and I thought it was a good. So in the original, if you watch the original Dawn of the Dead, it's one of his films, Romero's films, that are more heavily male driven, which is kind of like a, it's unique to him as a director, at least from my outside looking in.
When they did that first three, Night was heavy, 50-50. Your main protagonist in Day was female, right?
Yeah, Laura Cordell, Dr. Bowman. Yep. But yeah, I think she played a really believable character. As she had a little bit of medical training in the background, or prior to that, and then the zombie apocalypse just kind of happens in her in her bedroom at the very beginning of the movie, and her evolution throughout the movie was pretty fantastic. And then the movie ends with you kind of not knowing what's happening or what's going to happen. They might have all died, who knows? But as far as what you get to see on camera, she would be the final. Yeah, in that movie.
You want to hear something, an interesting little fact about her in that movie?
Yeah.
So, her husband came to set. It was kind of a rural northern Pennsylvania, I want to say. But he came to set. So, basically, when they were filming, she had a young daughter at the time, about the same age as Romero's daughter, actually. They were I think they're still friends, to be honest. But so her husband and daughter came to set, and there was this little motel where the cast was all kind of set up to sleep and eat and whatever. But a lot of that shooting was done in an actual old mine. Not relevant to my story, so I'll get to the point. Do you know the scene when all the hands come out at her?
Oh, at the very, very beginning?
That classic scene, right?
Yeah.
Well, the two hands that kind of go around her chest, that was actually her husband, behind her. And he wanted to do it kind of jokingly, maybe a little bit seriously, but he was like, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to protect your womanhood from all these, hands that are going to be coming out and trying to grab at you. I thought that was super cute.
Oh, that's funny.
George threw him in behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
But no, yeah, I would say if we went straight, strictly genre, zombie, and then, keeping it Romero just because he's the original, those would be that would be my list going down. But what about you, Ken? You got anything?
So, again, we're going to take a nosedive into the Hellraiser well, because when we're talking about women in horror, we got to talk about these amazing female Cenobites, right? So, from the low end, there's a lot of actresses that play these roles that you wouldn't even know who they are. They don't have a lot of screen time, or they're in full makeup. But these costumes and these situations, like these creature designs, just there's something that's resonated with me ever since I was a kid, right? So I thought it would be kind of cool to just shoot through a list of all the female actresses that have played Cenobites in the Hellraiser franchise. So we got the original female, that's actually her Cenobite name, Grace Kirby. And we have my favorite female Cenobite, Barbie Wilde. Hellbound, I've mentioned this before, was the first Hellraiser movie I've seen, was the second one when I was a kid. So it was kind of new to VHS or whatever, and I already had this affinity for the Hellraiser franchise just because of the posters and this mannequin that was in my childhood video store. So as soon as I physically could, I grabbed a copy and watched it, and there was something about Barbie Wilde's Cenobite, look. Those big blue eyes on that, pale, bald. I don't know, man. It was something that just drove me nuts as a kid. I loved her. I still love her. She's an amazing author too. A couple of really good books. And I just like her as a personality. So we've got the two originals, right? We got Valentina Vargas, Angelique from Bloodline, right? Come on. Super iconic. Paula Marshall, the Dreamer from Hell on Earth, the third one. Lynn Spiner and Patricia Cara, the two Wire twins in Inferno. Such cool character designs. I almost wish we had like a series of movies that had no humans and didn't take place in our reality and just explored this Clive Barker Leviathan universe, you know what I mean? Because I want to know all these characters. We get just these little backstories in writing that don't show up in the movies, but these like super cool looking creatures on screen. Sarah Hayward, that played Stitch in both Hellseeker and Deader. Nancy Lilly, she played the Bound in Hellseeker. I'm not going to pronounce this last name properly, but Laura Parasijev. Anyway, she played the sister, the only kid Cenobite, I think, to make it on screen, the sister in Deader. And lastly, Jolene Anderson as the fifth iteration of the Chatterer in Revelations. Those are all my lovely demonic or angelic, depending on your point of view, female Cenobites. What about you, G?
So I'm going to steer a little bit away from movies and say I'd love to mention Mira Grant, one of my favorite horror authors. She wrote Feed, which is probably her most well-known work. It's a zombie fiction that follows like a social media reporter and what happens, basically. And it's incredible. She does some good work there.
Right.
That is a fantastic book.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta check it out.
And
sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say I kind of glazed over it when I was talking about Barbie Wilde, but the two books that stick out to me are the Venus Complex that she wrote. Super sexy, gross serial killer book. I loved it. I've been waiting for a part 2-ish. I don't know if I'm gonna get one, but just dynamite writing. And Voices of the Damned, which is kind of more in that Hellraiser style of a world, but both super killer books. Top recommends.
All right, guys, that all sounds really great. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to add?
We love you, women of horror.
Yeah, we do.
And I'm about women of horror now.
That's fair. There are so many epic women in horror, and from the beginning of the genre right to this moment in time, women have helped shape and evolve our concepts of what horror is and can be. From all of us at Cold Dead Heart, we thank you. And thank you, fiendish listeners, for joining us. And until next time, stay spooky.